Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're back to our now Las Cruces Council work session. Today is Monday, October 25th, 2021. It's approximately 1:39 p.m. The reason why we're starting here, if you're just tuning in, is we had our TID board meeting. It started at 1 p.m. So we're going to start off with our work session with the pet of the week, and Jennifer Martinez from our communications office will be introducing them. So, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am Jennifer Martinez with today's Pet of the Week. I am from the city's communications office. And today I will begin with our super cute orange tabby cat, Toulouse. Toulouse has been a shelter cat for pretty much his whole life, and that's only about 5 months. He wants to know what it's like to have a forever home. This super sweet and handsome boy needs someone to rescue him and maybe give him his own pillow and blanket on your bed. Then we have our dog of the week. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Ricky. Ricky is also a sweetie who's learned the command sit and some other commands. He is willing to learn a few more if you just have patience with him and give him a chance. This 3-year-old gets along with everyone, and he might want a spot on your bed too. Learn more about Toulouse and Ricky by visiting the Animal Services Center of the Mesa Valley. That's ascmv.org, and you can make an appointment to visit these cuties. You'll need to call 382-0018 to make that appointment. You can also meet a few other pets this weekend at PetSmart. There's an adoption event taking place at PetSmart this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and that is at 2200 East Loman Avenue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Jennifer. It looks like Toulouse has a beard. Yeah,
He's a very attractive little boy.
Not bad for 5 months. That's good. Okay, thank you. So next we're going to go to Jobs of the Week. And it looks like Dr. Payadas, Francisco Payadas, will be providing that information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for the Jobs of the Week, let me pull it up really quick. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. For today's Jobs of the Week, we have a Senior Business Systems Analyst that the City of Las Cruces is currently looking for, and this position will be closing on November the 3rd. We also have positions available with home healthcare aide or caregiver. This is with Rayos de Luz Home Healthcare, and there's 10 positions available for this specific company. This will be closing on November the 14th, 2021. We also have a landscaper position with GNA Landscaping. Sorry, we have actually 2 landscaping positions with GNA Landscaping. This position will be closing on the 17th of November of 2021. And we also have a patient care technician. This is with the Vida Healthcare. This will be closing on 17/11, so also the November the 11th. And the maintenance also, sorry, we also have a maintenance aide with Mesa Valley Public Housing. There's 2 positions available, and they will be closing on November the 12th. As a reminder to all the public and to the members of City Council and the Mayor, we will be supporting Las Cruces Job Fair, and this is at the Convention Center. We've been doing a lot of promotion. We're truly trying to push getting those positions that are available filled. As you know, we're looking for job seekers. We currently have 21 businesses that have registered, and they're looking for jobs, including the City of Las Cruces that will be having some tables at the job fair as well. So if you know anyone looking for a job, or if you know any company trying to post any jobs, this is completely free to the public. Las Cruces Convention Center, November the 4th for the job fair. For a full list of jobs, internships, and volunteer opportunities, please visit www.employinm.com as well as www.governmentjobs.com/careers/Las Cruces. And then the offices at our friends with New Mexico Workforce Connections. They're located at 226 South Alameda Boulevard. Their phone number is 575-524-6250. And again, their webpage is employinm.com. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Payadas. Appreciate that. Okay, so we have 2 items on the agenda. First one, 3.1, is a legislative funding priorities. So it looks like Amy Johnson Basford and Larry Herron are city, I have a loss of words here, our, what do you call them? Lobbyists. Going to be presenting.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. My name is Amy Johnson Basford. I'm the Grants Administrator for the city. Today we're going to go through the legislative priorities. I will warn you, it is a rather lengthy list, and we're going to have a couple of sections where we need some direction from you all, but we will walk you through that. I want to first introduce Larry Herron, who is the city's lobbyist. He's been with us since 2008? Wow, 2008. He could retire, I think, probably from us. But Larry's been doing a great job for us for all those years, and so I'm going to have him start off and discuss the upcoming legislative sessions, the trends that he's seeing for the session.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. It's good to be back in person in front of you again, and we had some good meetings to discuss legislative priorities, so I apologize if some of this sounds redundant that we've already been over it, but things are still changing considerably as we go into this next legislative session. The 2022 legislative session will be a 30-day or a short session, and so the significance of that is the subject matter that the legislature can consider is limited to budget matters, so revenues, revenue bills, appropriations bills, what you call messages from the governor. So the governor can allow the legislature to consider matters that are not revenue or appropriations matters, but it has to be at her direction or with a message that actually says you can consider legislation related to whatever topic. And then the seldom used but also available option is previously vetoed legislation. So legislation that's been vetoed in a previous session can be considered. And of significance, before we start the session on January 19th of this year, the legislature is going to convene in a special session. I believe the date's going to be December 9th. That could change somewhat, but that's what has been announced, and that's for redistricting. So after every census, every 10 years, they'll have a redistricting special session where they'll set legislative districts and also congressional districts, and that'll be done in early December. And so we go in, and then in the next, it'll have significant impact in the next election the following November in 2022, because those legislative districts, depending upon population, will change. And that can have an impact on every constituency for legislators, but we could have movement where some legislators who represent pieces of Las Cruces now may lose those precincts, or we could have those legislators who gain more of Las Cruces in their districts. And so that's really one of the things that's on the forefront of legislators' minds right now. But the most significant is there is a significant amount of funding available for projects and for operations. The state's budget is, in this current fiscal year, is $1.4 billion as of the last revenue estimate above what they anticipated. And they're anticipating at least another $1.1 billion in the next fiscal year in new revenues. And that's changing on an upward trend, because when we last talked and we had our council meetings, the price of oil was about $74 a barrel. It's up to about $84 a barrel today. So we're seeing an upward trend. So that means they'll have significantly more money available for capital outlay funding. But the other thing to consider is they're going to have general fund revenues that they don't want to put in recurring expenses because they're not sure how long this bubble is going to last. So they're going to be a significant push to take some of that general fund revenue and fund projects with it. And so our list this year will look different than it has in the past because we've never seen revenue levels like this and funding. And that's even without discussing federal funds that are coming in or may come in, which would include that federal money that the legislature and the governor are fighting over who gets to decide who can spend it. There's still about $1.1 billion available there. And then we're going to have an infrastructure package that will be passed hopefully sometime in Congress that'll give us another pot of money. And so post-COVID, we never thought we'd be at quite such rosy levels, but we're seeing funding like we've never seen before, and they're anticipating that it's going to be there at least 2 to 3 years. I do caution you, because I always have to do that. That's also what they said right before in the 2020 session. We thought we were on a bubble that was going to be a 5-year bubble. We were going to have a whole bunch of money available. And then COVID hit, and it put a screeching halt to it. But we're coming, the recovery is good, and so there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us that we should take advantage of. And while the iron is hot, we should strike. And so that's why our list is going to be looking a little bit different this year. Is that the end of my slides, Amy?
Did you want to discuss them participating in session?
Oh, participation of council? Mm-hmm. Sure. So one thing we've done and is very effective in the past is once we adopt what our legislative resolution is, we usually have a Las Cruces, I don't call it, it's a city of Las Cruces lunch a day in Santa Fe where we encourage the council and staff to come up. We usually feed the legislature and have you come up and discuss with our legislators what their priorities are and what your priorities are, because it has a significant impact on them when you take the time to travel to Santa Fe to discuss what is important to you as a member of council and as a council as a whole and to the city. So we usually do that right around this year. It'll probably be the first week of February, just past the midpoint. And so if you haven't had an opportunity to do that, it has a significant impact with the legislators. And then I help facilitate any discussions or meetings you want to have with legislators or staff. And then also kind of give you a briefing of a snapshot of where we are in the legislative session at that point. And we usually do that right after the midpoint. So that's probably going to be around the first week of February.
Thank you, Larry. And Larry is not going away. He will be here throughout our presentation. And so what we have to, sorry, I got new glasses. I'm going to have to look over this way for you, so apologize for that. But one of the things that we have to do is we submit all our requests through the Legislative Council Service. They have done some changes this year. It is an earlier deadline than normal. Normally it's about mid-session, which is about when you all go up to meet with our legislators. This year it is pre-session, so we have to have those done early January. So that's one of the reasons why we've moved up our timeline just a little bit this year. So I wanted to let you know that. So the way that we go through the capital projects process, and I think I met with each of you, we talked about how this works, but the grants office, myself, the city manager, and our city lobbyist, Larry, we meet with each of you to talk about your priorities. That's legislative and capital priorities that you have for the upcoming sessions and in general. This year we included public works and grants, our budget in that meeting, so that some of the information that you provided will help guide their meetings with you later as we begin to develop the 2023 budget. Grants and Public Works also meets with every department of the city that has capital outlay priorities on the ICIP. When we talk about which ones they want to prioritize, we generally limit them to 1 to 2 total prioritized projects so that everybody gets a fair opportunity. We then compare those items to the ICIP, and it's a requirement for the city, since we use the ICIP as our state planning document, that our projects be on the ICIP. Legislators do look for that. We are required to have an ICIP number when we submit that information to the Legislative Council Service. We double check the estimated costs because most of the things that are on the ICIP were developed last October, so October of 20, those were developed. And so here we are, October of 21. We want to update our cost. We also take a look at where the current status of activities are, and that helps guide us not only for whether we need additional funding for something, or if we need to reauthorize something, or if we're having some issues with a particular legislative item. So we take a look at the entire picture during this process. And then we come to project selection. City manager's office and myself met a couple weeks ago to take the very large list of 30-plus priority projects that have been developed by council and the departments and brought it down to a list of about 15. We like to bring that list down a little more. Larry likes 10. I'll just tell you, it's Larry who guides us on this. So Larry likes 10 projects, but we're going to present 15 to you today for you to consider. We like to look at whether the project is ready, and the reason we do that is because it takes about 6 to 8 months from the time that the legislators meet until we actually receive the agreements for that funding, and then we have a deadline within a couple months to take action, to obligate some of that funding. That's a requirement of the severance tax bond law, and we must comply with that. That severance tax bond law applies regardless of how the funding is brought to us, whether it's general fund from the state or if it's severance tax bond capital outlay funding. Those laws apply. DFA uses those laws across the board for any capital outlay. So we do have to be ready. We have to be able to move on it fairly quickly. We look at how much funding is required for the project and if there is other funding available. We have tried to be very strategic this year in looking at what might be available federally with the new infrastructure acts that may be passing at the congressional level. And so we've tried to be strategic. We look at whether it can be phased because we often have legislators come to us and say, okay, if I give you $200,000, what can you get done with that? And those are things that Larry and I try and respond to during the session as he begins to negotiate with our legislators. We want to make sure that it's aligned with the city's strategic plan, and this year we looked at Elevate as well. And then it must be capital improvements for a lifespan of 10 years. So whatever we select for capital must be something that goes towards an actual capital asset for the city that has a lifespan of a minimum of 10 years. So if we're doing design and plan, that is intended to be part of a finalized capital project that the city owns as an asset in perpetuity, and it should have a lifespan of at least 10 years. Some of the equipment for fire and public safety may not have that kind of a lifespan, but that's sort of the exception to the rule. So those are our selection criteria. So one of the things that we have this year that Larry alluded to is a lot of extra money at the state that we anticipate will be there in January. I always like to be cautious as well and say, you know, gas prices and oil prices go up and down. And as he alluded to in 2020, we thought we were going to have a huge year based on oil prices in August. By January, those oil prices had fallen by about $50 a barrel. So we had a lot less money, but we will look at that this year there is additional revenue that we know is going to be there, they're looking for one-time investments. And then the governor has her ARPA outlay for capital, which is $1.75 billion, and they have not put out the guidance yet on what she's looking for. So what we are looking at is projects that are transformative and that are in line with the city's strategic plans. These are extremely large projects that will provide economic development, potentially energy efficiency for our city. We are looking at projects that are visionary in nature and would lead to increased quality of life, economic development, and regional development. And as I go through these, what city management would like to have is your, in general, agreement with the 5 projects that we are presenting and allowing them the opportunity to present those to the state as those criteria come out. And so in general, we want you to agree that these are projects that we would like to go for and empower our city management to work with our lobbyists to put those forward as we get information on how they want those submitted. So our first large improvement, so as I said, we're going to do this in a few phases. This first phase is going to be our large projects. And so the first one is to prepare the airport for passenger service. This includes doing a large majority of construction that is needed at the airport in order for us to provide passenger service both intrastate and out of state, which is the ultimate goal, is to have both. We are looking at a price tag of $37.5 million. It would include a passenger terminal, expansion of our parking lot, retrofitting the existing building for ticketing and other passenger services, extension of the runway 826 and runway 1230, both of which we have design and environmental assessment funding for right now, new maintenance facility with a fuel farm, and the relocation of our fuel farm and an expansion of it. The fuel farm, where it exists, needs to be moved in order to accommodate some expansions to it. The maintenance facility that we currently have is basically like a garage. Needs to be a little more ramped up than that. Needs to be able to contain our equipment for the airport in a covered facility. Needs to have some space for some work to happen inside that facility, so we need a new maintenance facility. In addition, when we move to passenger service, we will change the class of the airport, and therefore we will need an airport rescue and firefighting equipment truck that meets the class requirements of providing passenger service. We would also do fiber and enhanced broadband for the airport. So that would be one of the large projects we would like to put forward. Just as an aside, we will be looking at applying for the Rural Air Service grant that was approved at last year's legislative session, where they provide subsidy for an airline to come in for 2 years and provide service within the state of New Mexico. So that is something that we are looking at applying for, and therefore passenger service could be coming much sooner than any of us had previously hoped. The second large item is involving the Las Cruces Innovation and Industrial Park. It is a truck bypass that goes from the exit on I-10 to the Santa Teresa Port of Entry, and this should be $160 million, so I apologize that the correct PowerPoint didn't get put up here, but this is $160 million as opposed to $200 million. It is to construct a truck bypass route from the exit, as I said, on I-10 to the Santa Teresa Port of Entry. It would be a 2 or 4 lane truck-worthy road, which does have additional requirements to ensure that it can handle the heavy semi-truck traffic. This does include the cost of acquisition of rights-of-way and/or land acquisition for the road, and it would require redevelopment of the entrance to the Las Cruces Industrial Park. This is a major economic development initiative that would hopefully drive a lot of industry to locate at the Las Cruces Industrial Park. Then we have another one for the Las Cruces Innovation and Industrial Park, the Green Industrial Park project. This would complete a circular road to the south, on the south side of the industrial park, and add a solar farm, thus making it a green solar park. We would construct a new loop road to the south side of the park. I believe it would be one of the most southern roads that we would have there. And basically, it would be a loop around the park. And then we would construct a 20-megawatt solar farm on the south side, just off of that road, and thus creating a green industrial park. It is $46.6 million. That includes the road development as well as the solar farm construction. Then we determined that we should potentially put in some utility and water sewer projects, because that was called out in ARPA, and the governor may feel that doing some of those throughout the state would be a wise use of the funding that she has available to her for capital. So this would be a replacement of water lines and water tanks. This would replace approximately 20 miles of water lines within the city that are aging out and need to be replaced. It would also refurbish and replace 3 city water tanks to hold drinking water. Finally, the last project is a downtown public safety complex at $30 million. This is construct a new dual fire police safety complex similar to what we have on the East Mesa, and locate it downtown to replace the existing 2 stations, one for fire, one for police, and combine them into a combined complex. And those are our large projects. And so now moving into the standard capital outlay. We have our sewer and utilities projects. That is always a priority for us. We are increasing the amount that we are asking for this year in order to complete these 2 areas that we've identified for several years. Unfortunately, we ask for $1 million plus every year. We get about $500,000, so the project is somewhat slow. One of the priorities that almost every single one of you brought to mind when we were meeting with you individually was, let's get some of these projects that are ongoing completed. This is one of those. It's a long-term project. And so if we could get a significant amount of funding, we would be able to make some serious progress on these 2 priority areas and be able to move on to other priority areas. So this would be completing the remaining Brittany Estates and Estado Serranos and Hacienda Acres Phase 3, and that is $4.6 million. One of the things you'll notice as I go through all of these capital outlays is the dollar amounts we are requesting are much higher than what we normally request, and that is anticipation of the increased amount of funding that they may have available for us. Roadway improvements, we have 3 projects that have been identified by Public Works as priorities. Of course, our continuing East Mesa roads and drainage improvement. Again, we're asking for a very large amount here, $7 million. To continue the improvements of roadways and drainage on the East Mesa, make some significant progress on those activities. We have the Telstra Spruce intersection. This would be $1.5 million for additional lanes, access, and traffic signal configuration, and that is based on the work that was done over the last 2 years with a capital outlay that did some traffic studies. We do have Sue Lee here today who could talk about those things, but we did some significant traffic studies in the area to reduce congestion there, and this would be then implementing those recommendations. The Loman Walnut intersection, also $1.5 million. That would be a complete replacement of the traffic signals and ADA improvements. Okay, then we have building renovations. Every single one of you, I think without exception, called out that the Amador Hotel and the Brennegan Cultural Center are 2 projects that we've had ongoing for many, many years, and both need to be completed. The Amador Hotel renovation is estimated at $5 to $8 million. We put in the price tag here at $8 million. This would be completion of the total renovation of the building, as well as preparing for public use to include community input during the construction phase as to what the building should be used for. And as a reminder, it does need to be used for a public purpose because, as with all of these capital outlays, everything is intended for the public and must meet anti-donation requirements. Brennegan Cultural Center, again, a project that we've had for many years. We have been able to recently complete the replacement of all the electrical system, which is a major accomplishment, as well as the ceiling in the Brennegan Cultural Center. But we continue to need things like the exterior and interior wood elements replaced, the exterior stucco, which is the historic element of the building, repaired and protected. Replacement of the original windows or refurbishment of those windows and the lintels around those windows and the doors, and then other improvements as recommended in the report, including stabilization of the portion of the building that has the mural on the inside, which is one of our prized pieces of artwork for the city. A couple of other building renovations we have. These are a little lower priced. Convention Center improvements, $454,000. This is for the original section of the building. It would be replacement of furnishings and carpet in the original section. Also replacements of audiovisual, computer, and sound system throughout the building, and improving the parking lot. There was some issues with parking lot when they did the expansion, and so to correct some of those parking lot issues. And then the JCP, Juvenile Citation Program building envelope, renovate the exterior of this building to improve energy efficiency of the building, in essence to repair the stucco, paint, and ensure that envelope is high energy efficient for that building. And that one is at $230,000. For public safety, we have 2 projects. We combined what is normally 2 separate projects for the police department, which is the replacement of existing data terminals that have met their useful life, approximately 23 terminals, and the replacement of existing body cameras that have also met their useful life, approximately 30 to 35 cameras. That would be for $180,000. Police Station 1 improvements, $750,000. This year received a capital outlay appropriation of a very small amount. They were able to refurbish 1 office within the station. This would be to remodel the CIS and research offices, as well as resurface the north parking lot and install security fencing around that parking lot. That is $750,000. Also in public safety, we have fire equipment. This is the replacement of, I'm going to try and say this all in one breath, self-contained breathing apparatuses, or SCBAs. These need to be replaced for all members of the fire department due to age, as well as new requirements, equipment requirements that have been put out for this particular piece of equipment that every firefighter depends on quite a bit. Fire station improvements is another one for $840,000. This is actually to improve 4 of the stations. Station 1 would be interior improvements to include the front office area. Station 6 and 2, those are exterior refurbishments, again, to ensure the envelope is as energy efficient as possible, repair cracks and other issues in the stucco. Station 5, parking lot, asphalt drive pad, bay door replacement and generator. The generator would allow this station to become an emergency location in times of either extreme heat or extreme cold for the community. And that's at $840,000. And then we have our park improvements. Again, the majority of these are projects that have been ongoing that we need to see completion on and that have large community support. The Veterans Parking Lot, the Veterans Park parking lot, very much in demand by our veterans community. This would be to complete the design and construction of the parking area, making it ADA compliant, and that is something that our veterans community is willing to help lobby for. Our skate parks, we have $2 million request here for that. That's the completion of the existing park, which is approximately an additional $1 million to truly complete the renovation as desired by the community, the skating community, and then design and construction of a new park for $1 million. As you know, we have approximately $850,000 right now for the renovation. We have gone out to RFP. There have been some issues with those RFPs. We're hoping to be under contract sometime in the new fiscal year, but there are many amenities that could be added to it if additional funding were provided. Design and construction of a new park for $1 million. We have $100,000 to do some work on a new park at this time, and additional funding would be needed to actually construct a new park. A smaller request from parks that's very much needed is the East Mesa pool improvements. They have had some damage done to the shade structures there due to wind and other issues out there. There's also some general improvements that need to be made at that pool as it begins to age. That's $150,000. Finally, so that completes our capital outlay. We're going to talk about the reauthorization of the downtown parking garage, and I'm going to have Larry speak to you just a bit about how reauthorization works, but I want to go over the original appropriation that was given. So originally, the purpose was to plan, design, and construct a parking garage in downtown Las Cruces. There was a total authorization of $2 million. The state withheld 1% for art and public places. That will remain with the state regardless of our reauthorization. That was $20,000. It left us with $1.98 million for the project. We hired a consultant who reviewed a couple of the downtown lots and then was contracted for to review all of the lots. That total contract is $321,000. That is to be completed by December 31, and that's very important because as soon as we begin the reauthorization paperwork for this project, the existing grant will be closed. So we cannot do any more work on the existing grant once we process the reauthorization. Basically, that grant closes and a new one is created upon the reauthorization. So that leaves us with $1.67 million, basically, $1.7 million and some change. And I want to have Larry kind of go over how reauthorization works and how we determine how much money we have available to reauthorize.
Thanks, Amy. So for reauthorization, the way it works is the Legislative Council Service will go back to the original legislative sponsors who allocated the money. And at the time where we got money for the parking garage, that information was not publicly available. So they have to go back, they will pull those original funding, and they go back to the legislator to ask them to reauthorize. As is the case with this parking garage money, we have at least one legislator who is no longer in the legislature. So then what they do is they go to the legislator that succeeded that particular legislator. In this case, Senator Papin is no longer in the legislature, so that's Senator Hamblin. And then each of those legislators have the ability to reauthorize for whatever purpose they so desire. So we could ask them to reauthorize it for shade structures, or if we have Amador Hotel, that would be our request, but they have the option to authorize those funds to go anywhere. So really the authority lies with the legislator, but if we do a good job explaining to them why we're making the switch and what we're wanting to do, then hopefully they would agree to reauthorize them for our project. And with the $2 million, because that information was not publicly available at the time, We know of 2 legislators, Senator Souls and Senator Papin, who allocated funding, but it's possible there are others who allocated a portion of it. So then what they have to do is, if we've already spent money, they have to go back, they'll divide what we have left, probably based upon the percentage that each legislator allocated, and then each individual legislator has to agree to that reauthorization, and that's all done once we submit those reauthorization request forms.
Thank you, Larry. So based on the conversations that the mayor has had with Senator Hamlin and Senator Souls, we know that Senator Hamlin is amenable to reauthorizing her portion of the funding that's remaining. For simplicity purposes, we put $1 million here for the downtown shade structure. Senator Souls, we don't know that he authorized the remaining $1 million, but we're going to, for simplicity purposes, say that he did. And his desire was either the airport or the Amador Hotel. We believe that from council's direction that the downtown stage structure is something that you would like to see reauthorized to the amount that we can with Senator Hamlin. But then we have the amount that's remaining, and whether you want that to go to the airport or to the Amador Hotel, which were the 2 projects that were discussed with him, that is where we need some direction. Okay? And again, because we don't have exact amounts as to how much was authorized by each of the legislators, we are going to have to kind of play the exact amounts by ear. We are not required to have a resolution from council on reauthorizations. We do reauthorizations every year for a variety of reasons. Some of them are to change scope. Some of them are to extend time period. We will be reauthorizing a couple of other appropriations this year to extend the time on them. One of them is cinematic infrastructure, which we seem to reauthorize pretty regularly until we get a project under our belt for that one. We believe that those are the 2 that will be reauthorized. So that takes us to the beginning of our discussion period. And if possible, and the chair can let us know how they would like to discuss. But the first section would be the large project list, and if in general the council agrees that these are projects that city management should pursue with our lobbyist in requesting funding for large projects, either from the governor and her ARPA funding that she has available, or from the legislature and their excess funding that they have available for one-time projects. Again, we don't have a lot of guidance yet on how those projects will be requested. So this is a general authorization to city management to pursue one or more of these projects depending on what that criteria is. And so I will defer to the chair on whether you would like us to discuss each of these sections separately, or if I should go through all of it, and then we can discuss however you'd like.
Thank you, Amy. Mayor had to step out, so I'm thinking let's go ahead and go through it, and then we'll discuss afterwards. Thank you.
Great. So then we have our capital outlay projects. Unfortunately, I couldn't get this onto one screen, all of them on one screen for you guys to look at everything and pick and choose. Again, we'd like to move this list from 15 down to 10. We are asking for additional large funding, much larger funding than we do on an annual basis, based on what we anticipate is the available funding for capital outlay this year. And so we do want to try and bring this list down to 10. So this first side has utilities, the 3 public works projects that are primarily road projects, the Amador Hotel renovation, Brennegan Cultural Center renovation, the Convention Center improvements, and the JCP energy efficient exterior. And then we have additionally the 4 different public safety projects, police equipment, which includes the body cameras and mobile data terminals, the police station improvements to station number 1. Public safety for fire equipment is the breathing apparatus for $750,000. Also for the fire station is improvement to 4 different fire stations. And then we have the Veterans Park, the parking lot for that at $2 million. The skate parks, a renovation of the current one and a new one for $2 million, and then the East Mesa pool improvements. So that is the total of the capital outlay projects. As I mentioned, the reauthorization does not require a resolution, but if you give general direction, I suppose if there's not a disagreement on the direction you give, we would not need a resolution, but if there is, we can bring forward a resolution for that if we need to. So our next step is for you all to let us know what you would like to see done. We will then bring a resolution on November 15th to move forward with the legislative request, and then we would prepare the legislative request form by December 31st. This timeframe gives Larry at least a good month prior to legislators going to the holidays and then to session to begin to work with them, gives PIO enough time to develop our informational packets that we want to distribute to our legislators in advance of the session and then have available during the session. As I said, the legislative request forms are due by January 13th of 2022, which is a week prior to the session starting. And we will open that up for discussion at this point.
Thank you, Amy. Councillor Abeyta-Stuvey and Councillor Flores, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Amy and Larry, for this presentation. As we look towards the session, and hopefully a lot of great opportunities. And I think we have a very robust list that hopefully will be fulfilled. Breaking it down into the two sections for our large asks. I do have a technical question. We have on the list as our number 5, the Downtown Public Safety Complex, which is a great ask. But we also, on our shorter list, have some items for the same buildings for building improvements. And so how are we looking about addressing those when asked why we have them on both lists or how we'd like to adjust?
I think that's a great question, and I would defer to Larry on how we would manage that once we submit them. It's possible that if it looks like we would be funded for the downtown parking or downtown public safety complex, that we would remove the other 2 requests. But let me defer to Larry on that.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey. That's what I would recommend, and is if we see we're getting traction on the larger ask and we're getting some of that statewide money, or we're going to have that project be able to be fully funded, we could then pivot before the actual allocations are made, because the legislators will still get their list right around the time you'll all be coming up for Las Cruces, City of Las Cruces Day in Santa Fe to make their allocations, and so we will be able to address that issue with them. But the other thing I would consider is that list of those 5 big projects, and you of course have the ability to change what those priorities would be, but I would look at that more as a longer term list, because if we're going to have this kind of funding available for 2 or 3 years, those are projects we may want to keep on the burner that we're trying to get funding in successive legislative sessions. And so then the technical question would be, and it would be to public safety and to public works, do we need some of those interim improvements made before we can get the full funding for that public safety complex? But that, I would view them as probably, we're going to see those for the next few years versus just a one-time ask.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I know there's going to be a few different items on the governor's call, and if some of these projects align with those types of calls, it might be a nice way to work them together. And then for our short capital outlay, I've already ranked my 10. I don't know if you
awesome
need that.
That would be great.
So in my mind, looking at things, items such as septic, of course that's deals with my district as well, is on my top of the list. The convention center, Brennegan, JCP, roadway improvements. The public safety equipment, I think, needs to be a priority for both fire and police, the veterans parking lot, and the PW Mesa roads and drainage.
Okay, so let me clarify. You had put road improvements. Was that the East Mesa roads, or is that a separate one?
You know what? That is for the Telstra intersection.
Okay. Telstra Spruce?
Yes, please.
All right, great. I do have folks in the audience taking down very copious notes of what each of you ask, but I'm just making notes on general, what you might be ranking here. Do you have other questions, Counselor?
Tried to streamline that pretty well for
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Flores, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amy, and thank you, Larry. So if we have so much money, why do we have to pare it down to 10 from a list of 15? All of them are essential. And if there's money going to be sitting there for another 2 or 3 years, why not ask for the money now, use it, and then we can ask for more money for other things as they come up, because they're constantly coming up. So, and a lot of these things have been on the list for years. So what gives? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Flores. There is a lot of money, but as will always happen, about 10% of the capital outlay requests get funded. So even in years where there's less money, everybody knows that there's all of these pots of money available, so every other entity is doing the same thing. And so the number of the asks will go up in proportion to how much money is available. And so we just want to have a reasonable expectation and reasonable ask of our legislators so they can fully fund as much as is appropriate. But every other entity is doing the same thing we're doing, which is trying to find those big transformational projects, and so it's still very competitive.
Competitive as how? Between the legislators are forced to opt for whatever their specific districts or areas are concerned, and so it's a. But if there's that much money, Larry, I mean, why would that be that grab?
Mayor and Councilor Flores, that's exactly right. So I'll just give you an example. So let's say last year our requests were a total of $10 million, and Doña Ana counties were similar, New Mexico State, et cetera. All of these entities are getting the same advice. We have a one-time opportunity for a lot of funding, and so have exponentially increased. And so now if we're asking for $100 million, or actually closer to $300 million, the same thing is happening at every level. So everybody else is competing for those same pots of money. And so we still need to be reasonable in the number of funding requests we have from our legislators, because they just won't be able to, they won't have enough money allocated to hit too many projects. And if we come with too many, the feedback I get from legislators is always, come on, you guys should be reasonable in what you're asking for. So there's still that tension for us.
Well, if it almost sounds like, well, isn't it like maybe on a pro rata basis, or in terms of the population of a given area, or there's no rationale except that legislators are overwhelmed by having to look at numbers and allocate monies? I mean, I don't understand that part at all.
No, Mayor and Councilor Flores, no, but what legislators like is that we keep our expectations and requests to be what they consider reasonable. And it's not necessarily based on a pro rata or population, but it's just the amount of infrastructure or the amount of entities who are going to come to them and ask for funding. It's pretty significant. So if they're only going to be able to fund 10%, if we're not asking for too much, there's a fine line between asking for the right amount and the right projects that they like and we like, and overreach. And essentially, we don't want to overreach, because then that can impact us this year, next year, and with the legislators in the future. So we just try to be sensitive to what they can reasonably help us fund.
Okay, so I'm still back at square one. I don't get it. If we have that kind of money, why is there such a problem with the allocation of monies? I mean, the numbers, as far as I'm concerned, and relatively speaking, maybe they're not, but in terms of what I see, they're astronomical. I mean, the numbers, the money available. So, and then some of these things that we've been asking for, again, it's been maybe decades as far as I could see, where things haven't gotten done. So then of those, say we narrow it down to 10, you would have to take a poll here of those present today. Is that what you're looking at? It would have been nice to have had this list beforehand. Maybe it was, I didn't see it. But so from that, we pare it down to 10, and of those 10, is there a guarantee that they will be funded, or is it just possible that they will, and then we'll be back here again next year, or maybe I might not be, but council will be back again next year looking at this situation again, and as you said, there's going to be money for the next 2 or 3, did you say, yeah, two legislative sessions after this one, and then we're back at the same game?
Mayor and Councilor Flores, there is no guarantee ever with getting funding allocated through the legislative process. They're anticipating they're going to have funding available like this for the next 2 or 3 years. But I always take that with a grain of salt, because that's exactly what they said in 2020. And then COVID hit, and then oil went to negative $30 a barrel, and we were looking at a $2 billion shortfall. And that happened within a very short period of time. And that also occurred at the same time you got a price war between the Saudis and the Russians on oil, and oil tanked. And so then our economy was in shambles. And so I'm optimistic, but I'm always cautiously optimistic. And it's difficult. If you ask the legislators for too much money, at some point they're going to think that our requests are unreasonable. And so I always try to find the sweet spot with what's achievable, important, and also reasonable to ask the legislators for, because that puts a different kind of pressure on them, and I try to be sensitive to that so that they have reasonable requests from every entity that come and ask them for money, because they'll probably have 30 or 40 different entities to each legislator coming and asking for funding and pieces of their money, as will the governor, as will the state agencies as we get this federal funding in.
Well, if that money's there, Larry, does it work this way? Does it work, there's this money, I mean, at the beginning of the presentation by Amy, she put big numbers up there. That money isn't expected to be allocated this year? No?
I don't know if I...
See if I can. Mayor, Councilor Flores, remember I said there are 3 different sections. There's the large ask that we are looking for the one-time allocations from either the legislature or the governor's ARPA money. And so those are separate from what we normally ask for capital outlay. For capital outlay, each legislator is allocated a certain amount of money, usually $2 million or $4 million. So that one legislator has $2 million to spread among the 30 entities who have come to them asking for money. So we try and find a number of projects and an amount of projects that varies so that we can get the maximum amount of funding. So for capital outlay, that section of it, we do look to kind of be a little more restrictive in how many we do, because the years that we've gone forward with many projects, so I think 1919 or 1918, we went with 23 projects. Of those projects, we were funded for less than 30% of our ask. Normally, we're at about a 75% funding for our ask. So it was clear that having many projects above and beyond our normal 10 to 12 was not setting well with our legislators. So that was a lesson that Larry and I both learned that year, that putting a bunch of projects in front of them does not guarantee us better funding. I hope that helps a little bit.
Well, it sounds to me that it's a tactical move on your part, right? I mean, you have to look at who the players are, and you have to see how they're going to play. Mm-hmm. But I just thought that I think this might be a quote, I don't know, there is a significant amount of revenues for capital funding, $1.4 billion, plus infrastructure money, more money from Congress. It's sort of a quote.
Mayor and Councilor Flores, that's correct. That's the $1.4 billion is revenue above the projections for this year. So that also includes, that's not just capital, that's general fund revenues that the state will use for operations. And so, you know, they're looking at things like statewide broadband, they're looking at increased funding for early childhood education, putting more money into K through 12. So everybody, including state agencies, are competing for those funds. So it is a lot of money, but when you consider the needs and the infrastructure needs throughout the state, it's significant, but it's not going to be enough to fund all of those requests.
Thank you very much, Larry, and thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And after you hear the large ask that I'll ask later, then it'll take all your worries away. So, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you, Larry. And Amy, could you, to help out, put the list together? And maybe while we're talking, could staff maybe make copies of it, kind of side by side, so we can, I'm very visual, yeah, you know, where we can look at that. But
we certainly can.
As far as I just have some more technical, I guess, pieces or questions to ask related to the lists, if you will. And they are things like on slide 7, the relocation of the fuel farm. So are we responsible when you say fuel farm, I'm thinking where they put fuel in, and so would we have to clean that up in addition to?
You mean as far as the environmental
And part of
impact
the
of it?
environmental impact, yes. And would that be a part of the amount that we're asking for?
Yes. So any time that we, as a city or an entity, contaminate the ground in any way, shape, or form by having fuel farms or oil tanks or that kind of thing, we are responsible for that cleanup. And so this would include the cleanup of that area so that it can be repurposed for something else. But I do have Andy here who can probably provide you much more technical information than I can.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Gondara. Actually, I can't add much more to what Amy said. She gave a very good answer on that. Yes, we do need to take care of remediation.
Thank you, Andy. And then as far as the fiber and the enhanced broadband, Amy, you mentioned specific to the airport, but will that be included in the West Mesa I'm going to get it all wrong, the right word and name of our park now. Will that include capacity for around that area as well as it relates to fiber and broadband?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Gondara, it will primarily focus on the portion that's north of I-10.
Okay.
The portion south of I-10 already has some of that infrastructure in place.
Right.
But certainly north of I-10 and the airport.
So it will include that, okay, for others? Okay,
Yes.
good. And then slide 10, thank you
Sure.
so much, Andy.
Thank you.
I'm complete supportive of those larger projects, by the way.
Thank you.
And as far as the public safety complex, I think it's an excellent idea. I'm very supportive of that. Often we hear sort of the folks that land there or stay there that it has not been updated and the complex has not, or the building hasn't been updated
Right.
in teen years. So I'm very, very cognizant of that and I'm complete support of that. But at one time we talked about a lab. Is that included in that or somewhere in the East Mesa complex?
We have removed the forensic lab from our request list, primarily because of the cost of operating that and that the state will not provide operational costs for it. It is extremely expensive to operate, and I believe I have Eric here who might talk about that, or Miguel, who could both talk to that point, but we have removed that as one of our priorities because of the cost of operations and the fact the state would not support us in operating a southern forensic lab down here. And I will let Chief Miguel Dominguez speak to that.
Amy, I appreciate that, and I've always been very concerned about the lag that we have in regards to processing those rape kits, and I thought that would be some of the more helpful thing to have something in the southern part. So, hi, Chief.
Good afternoon, everybody. Police Chief Miguel Dominguez for the record. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to do what Andy just said. She covered it pretty well. The price for a lab would be a lot more than $30 million if we were going to go in that route. But the costs do rise, and lack of support from the state for a crime lab is a hindrance for us.
Can you give me a roundabout price in terms of what that might look like? I thought we had, I don't remember. It's been a while.
With the prices in materials and things of that nature, I couldn't give you a guess right now.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. But again, I'm 100% supportive of our public safety and everything that you need to protect the citizenry. And so I'm most definitely in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief.
That's very much appreciated.
let's see, and I wanted to ask, because I've sort of driven around at night regarding that area, that general area. Lighting is pretty poor. Would lighting be a part of that as we move forward in terms of the complex? I just feel we need to have more lighting over there.
Yes, I think Mayor, Councilor Gondra, I think the ideas that were brought forward, because this is fairly new, was that it would be fairly transformational to downtown in that there might be a walkway coming over Spruce, Picacho. There would be additional lighting. It might be kind of a multi-building complex. So I'll take those to Christine. And we do have your copies for you that Christine will distribute if she can. And so yes, and the other thing I wanted to mention, Councilor Gondra, is we did receive a grant last year through the Department of Public Safety to bring all of the rape kits up to date, and I believe that those have all been completed for our area. So we are current on that. We are working with the Department of Public Safety on some of those kind of backlog issues when funding is available to them.
That's excellent to hear. I hadn't asked in quite a long time, so I'm happy to hear that we've been able to make a dent in that to zero. Yeah. And then I have slide 21. What is?
Okay. Thank you, Miguel.
Oh, it's just those. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm again supportive of the larger funding projects with the airport, public safety, the equipment, the sewer improvements that we definitely need to make, the Telstra Spruce intersection, the Amador Hotel, the Brennegan Library, of course the JCP. I do want our skate park, an additional skate park, and so I think that is. For me, most important.
Okay.
And did I say the Brennegan Library?
I
The
believe
Brennegan?
so.
And the
Yes.
Brennegan. And then lastly, as we had the conversations, Amy, we talked about the area as a transformational project, Main and, going to Highway 70, sort of that.
Right.
That,
Yes, and so
over
we did.
underpass, I don't remember, and I know that through Public Works and New Mexico DOT, that they wouldn't consider that until we brought forth or put forth some money. Where is that at in
Exactly.
this project?
Let me defer to the Director of Public Works, David Cedillo. We did look into that. That was not moved forward as a priority when we met with city management, primarily because some of the issues with DOT's design, I believe. But I will let David speak to that. He was in that meeting as well.
Thank you, Amy. Mayor Pro Tem Gondara, David Cedillo, Public Works Director. And yes, Amy did mention we do have some estimated costs for that as we move forward. Those have been projected with the COVID cost of 30%. We have that in place, but we're still talking with NMDOT to be able to have those discussions on moving forward with the project. At this point in time, they have designed the project. They haven't let the project for construction.
So it doesn't get placed in this list, if you will, currently?
Currently, at the moment, that is correct.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so what will, what will entice them and you to put it on the list? I've been advocating for this for a few years now, so I'm just going to go all out and say it's one of those transformational projects, and I'm going to keep asking. So what is it going to take, David?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Those discussions still need to occur with NMDOT and the City of Las Cruces. That way we can come to terms to see if there's anything moving forward on what that portion of funding will be needed from the City of Las Cruces to have that incorporated into the project.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess I have to talk to NMDOT. I will do that. And anybody that's listening in the area, because I get a lot of complaints about it, so please get your advocacy hat on. Thank you, Amy. I think I gave 10, didn't I? Is someone counting out there?
Leanne's supposed to be counting. Our chief financial officer is counting for us.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and just list the 10 again?
I did list them already.
Okay, well, can you do it
Thank
again?
you.
So-
And if I'm not, get with me later.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
So Councilor Bincon?
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your presentation. Yes, I'm also trying to sort of navigate the reasonable versus transformational projects that I keep hearing. I feel like those are sort of conflicting messages, but I also get that there's two lists, right? And so I'm going to just approach it that way. Can you say more about because I feel like I don't have enough information about the downtown public safety complex.
Yes, so the downtown public safety complex is really driven by the need that each year we are coming forward with requests to improve those buildings, and they're minor, small improvements that do not really meet the needs of the two departments that we have located there. I believe those buildings are in excess of 30 years old. I'm sure Jason or Miguel will correct me back there if they're newer than that, but I think they're both in excess of 30 years old, which is about the lifespan of a normal building, a city building. Certainly they do need updated space and equipment and probably internet and all of those kinds of great things that after 30 years all buildings need updates on. And so the idea was, let's look at if we could get the funding to bring forward that here, we could have something similar to what we have on the East Mesa that is serving that area well into the future. So that was the visionary idea behind it. Again, it's an idea at this point that doesn't have design started, and where exactly it would be located downtown, whether we would remove those two buildings and build something else, or if we would put it in a different location near City Hall. So It's really quite a vision at this point. Eric was the one who kind of brought this forward to us for the fire and police department. I don't know if you want to have anything else to share.
Leanne, if he said, Amy, if he says you explained it all, you're 3 for 3.
Okay, we'll go for that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Eric Enriquez, Assistant City Manager. And Councilor Bencomo, just one minor correction. Station 1 is 57 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
So it is an aged building that, just to give you an example, the HVAC system, whenever we have problems with those, which we do every year, it'll take over $1 million to replace that. We bring in staff or an expert from the outside to work on it, and they all gawk over it of how ancient the system is, but always tell us to get rid of it.
You know what? Sold. That's helpful.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Amy, so since we're in pitching mode, I know you don't want additional things added to the list. However, as we're talking about transformational projects, which is what I keep hearing from legislators at least, because of this downfall, and then Public Works, I feel like Tony's already I know what she's going to say. I understand that we have about 80 miles of road that need to be completely redone. When I think about, and I say this every time, when I think about the call that I consistently get from constituents that I think would be transformational, that people would see local government at work, is repaving streets that are the worst on the index. What would happen if we pitched this huge street repavement project for the streets that need it the most in Las Cruces? I don't know, 10 streets that need it the most, that have the lowest number on the index. I'm just curious about if those conversations were had, if we're open to those conversations, because I feel like this money is a huge opportunity to do something like that.
Right. So Tony can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about $1 million a quarter mile?
Per mile.
Per mile? Is it per mile or a quarter mile? It's a quarter mile.
Okay.
So $1 million a quarter mile, so we need $4 million for every mile of road we have. This was one of the strategic conversations we did have, because if the infrastructure bill that is before Congress comes out, there will be funding for major infrastructure projects within our community. And this is one of those that we would then look to put forward because of the quantity of money that the federal government has as opposed to the state. So we could go and ask for $4 million and get a mile of road replaced from the state legislature. We could go to the federal government and ask for $50 or $60 million and get double that, and get so many more miles done. Tony, if you'd like to speak to that, but that was one of the strategic conversations we had with city management.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate that insight.
Thank you, Amy. Good afternoon, Mayor, Councilor Bencomo. The reason why it's $250,000 per quarter mile is the replacement of utilities. There had to be some massive coordination with utilities and the replacement of the out-of-date utilities there. So it's not just a straightforward, but yeah, we can definitely look at that, but it's just going to be a consideration or just a full replacement of utilities and pavement for these projects.
Got it. No, thank you. I appreciate that breakdown, actually. Yes, I remember it being per mile, but I appreciate the further context. And it is something I will continue to bring up, especially absolutely as we see Congress hopefully act soon on behalf of the American people on this very important bill. And for me, this would be a top priority when that happens. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And then in terms of the other, one more question. Both Amy and Larry, you keep talking about the entities that will be asking for money from legislators. I was under the impression that projects can only be asked through a municipality.
That is correct. I will let Larry speak to that a little further, but remember they can be quasi-governmental too. So NMSU, the spaceport is its own entity. The county, us, and then of course any individual within the state, any resident can go forward and ask for money, and a legislator may choose to give it to them through a municipality. That's how we've gotten some of our more unusual appropriations, is that community members go forward and just ask, hey, I want this for this place, and suddenly the city gets some money that we have to do something with.
Okay, interesting.
Speak a little more to that.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Bencomo. That pretty much sums it up. But any political subdivision can receive funding directly. Nonprofits typically are the other that will request legislative funding. They can receive it, but it has to go through a fiscal agent, which has to be a public entity. And so the way that works, it's because of the anti-donation clause, unless it fits one of those exceptions, essentially the way it will work, and I'll use a real-life example because it's the one that's easiest for me. There was a dance studio in Albuquerque that served special needs children. They wanted a dance floor. So that dance floor goes to a public entity, and then what the dance company had to do was provide educational services or tickets as an in-kind to pay back the dance floor, and at the end they were able to get it back. So it's a complicated process, but other entities can get it as well.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. As I look at this breakdown, I think a lot of them are city-driven, not necessarily, right? The Veterans Park, the skate parks, those are very much constituent-driven, I think. But that might be it. And so, I do want to ask about what our process has been like given the downfall in the moment we are in at the state that no one expected, certainly not after last year, what has been the public engagement process we've done with nonprofits? Because I've been approached at least by one talking about the Children's Museum and what a huge opportunity it could be now to potentially fully fund that project.
So thank you, Mayor, Councilor Bencomo. A couple years ago, an executive order was put out by the then governor regarding fiscal agent status and requesting money for nonprofits. The requirement is that, number one, they be on the ICIP of a municipality that is willing to be their fiscal agent, and number two, that they have an active agreement with that fiscal agent before the legislative session. And so I have had outreach from that individual as well. They are not currently on our ICIP, and that is because we have legislative funding for that organization that has yet to be spent, that has yet to be contracted for or engaged in, which would provide the study and the design work that's necessary to go forward for construction money. So at this time, it's not reasonable for that organization to go forward. However, we have done outreach to all the other fiscal agent organizations that we do have active agreements with. We've sent them the ICIP and said, here is what last year you all came to us in October and said, this is what you were planning to want to do. If you're on that list, you can submit to us, and we will take that to council for a resolution. So probably in early December, sorry, I can't breathe with this on.
That's okay, Amy.
So they have a deadline of November 12th to get that information to my office. We will then review their information in comparison to the ICIP, much like we do all of these projects. And on December 1st, you guys will be presented with a resolution for those organizations that are wishing to go forward for funding that are on the ICIP and have an active fiscal agent agreement. And that is primarily the Mesa Valley Community of Hope agencies.
Yeah. So this year, November 12th.
This year, November
Okay.
12th. So in 2 weeks, they're due to me that they want to go forward for funding in 2022.
So what's the timeline to get on the ICIP?
So that is beginning now with Public Works Department. Sarah Cundiff is our CIP coordinator, and she has done outreach to all of the community groups that we have fiscal agent agreements with. We have about 10 of them. And they will come forward and start to go through the process of putting their projects with their project descriptions and all of the information regarding their project into the ICIP. That'll be brought to you in May when you get the budget. You approve the CIP, which is in part how we develop the ICIP, and then that will be submitted in September and available for funding in 2023.
Gotcha.
It's a long process.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. When I can see why, absolutely. So, yes, and then I'm just trying to get clear, too, on my timeline. So for this year's ICA, for 2022, we voted on that in May?
Yes, you voted on that in May, and in September, Sarah submitted to the state the official ICIP submissions for 2022. So just a month ago, she submitted what we had approved back in May, what you all had approved as the CIP. Those items that are classified as ICIP grant projects. The way those are classified is that when they put forward their project, they have to indicate that they are anticipating state grant funding.
Okay.
And if they indicate that, then they will be put on the ICIP.
Okay.
If they indicate they're going for some other kind of funding, or they expect the city to pay for it all, it may not end up on the ICIP. So that huge list of CIP projects that you all approve, not all of those get to be put on the ICIP.
Okay, Amy, thank you so much. That is very, very helpful on my end.
Great, thank you.
Just quick follow-up on the Children's Museum. What's been the holdup on spending that money, on getting that money out?
So a lot of it has been the development of the RFP. It did take over a year and a half to get the fiscal agreement with the organization worked out with them and our attorney's office and their attorneys. That was a very long process. It was over a year, a minimum of a year, before we actually were able to bring that fiscal agreement to you. So that was a year after we had received that funding. So they went forward and asked for the funding without having any kind of agreement with us. That's one of the reasons that executive order was put in place.
Wow.
Was because that was happening when there were years like this one, when there was a ton of money, and everybody in the world was going to their legislator and saying, hey, I need money. We got a couple that we actually refused that were actually for businesses, brand new legislators that didn't understand that they could not put capital money into a business, that we actually ended up having to refuse. So it's a very long process. It's very complicated. And fortunately, those nonprofits that we do have agreements with fully understand the process.
Okay.
And are willing to, kind of go through the lengthy ordeal that it takes to get funding, because it does benefit them in the long run.
Okay. No, I actually really appreciate that process. So thank you, Amy. And then on the top 10, I hate when you all ask us to do stuff like that.
We could have just brought you 10, but then you wouldn't have had any choices.
That's true, that's true.
So we want to give you choices.
Is there any way to couch the 4 public safety into sort of one item?
What do you think, Larry? We already have combined their equipment all together in one and their state, their capital into one. I'm not sure that we can
Or
combine
at
them
least,
even more.
fire one, police one.
Mayor and Councilor Bencomo, if you do that, what will happen is, if we combine them, and I don't know which way that list is.
Right there.
So if we combine them, and then we have roughly 950,000 or 930, and then 1.6, what the legislators are going to immediately ask me for is, can you break that down into smaller chunks? And then I'm going to break them down into the MDTs and the cameras, and so we're going to end up in the same place.
Okay.
Because that's
Okay.
what they typically do. And there's been a significant push, even for any of these, they're going to ask me for smaller breakdowns so that they can fund chunks of these already.
Okay. Thank you. And Amy, the utilities septic system replacement, that is still an amount left over even after our own ARPA allocations towards that?
Yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
the utility septic system, and I believe I have Delilah here. There she is back in the back. She may be able to come forward. But the septic system replacement project is actually a $22 million project that was started,
Oh, yes.
6 years, 7, well, it's been at least 6 years, maybe 10 years that we started that. So that was a $22 million project at that time, which would translate today into dollars of around $40 million. And we're chipping away at it $500,000 a year at a time. So even with our ARPA commitment, that does not necessarily do a whole lot for us. And our ARPA money went towards actually the replacement of 2 streets, the utilities on 2 streets as opposed to actual
Correct.
septic system. But Delilah has worked her way down here, and so I will defer to the Director of Utilities, Delilah Walsh.
Yeah, I thought it was both. I definitely know the 2 streets, and then I also thought it was septic.
Well, Delilah Walsh for the record, Utilities Director. I'll do what everybody else did, and Amy pretty much covered it. But these projects, as Amy mentioned, would be phases. So what we'd like to do is finish that Brittany Estates area, completely close that out, and then hook up as many as we can on projects that have already been completed.
Okay. Thank you, Delilah. So then, Amy, on this page, then for me, it's utilities, the 3 public works projects, the JCP, and on the other page, the 4 public safety projects in the skate park.
Okay.
And-
Great. And just as Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, the ARPA funding for the septic systems was to provide rebates to
Support for residents.
For residents, so
Okay,
it doesn't
yes,
actually
you're
go
right.
to this portion of the
Yep.
project, which is where we're putting in the sewers.
That's right on. So much money, I keep losing track.
Boy, that was a mind test there.
Yes, all right, thank you, Mayor, that's it for me, thanks, Amy.
Counselor, can you repeat your 10, I guess?
I guess, I don't want to repeat them because I feel bad. Okay. Utilities, the 3 public works projects, the JCP, the 4 public safety projects, and the skate parks. That's 10, yes?
I'm sorry, and what was the last one you just said?
Skate parks.
parks.
Skate.
Parks, okay. So on the large project list, did you have one?
Are you generally in favor of all of those?
Oh,
The-
yes.
the large
Did you need us to,
Yeah, what I need on the large projects, Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, is the general agreement that our city manager can move forward with our lobbyist on which ones would be most appropriate to go forward, depending on the guidance that's put out by the legislature or the governor's office, which we have not received yet. So we kind of want an okay for them to pivot on a dime and go, okay, this is what they're looking for, this is one of the projects the council was in agreement with, we can go forward with that.
Oh, okay, so most likely one of the 5.
Most likely, one of the
But
5
that's
will be
something letting
submitted.
City manager and his team.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
I
most
thought-
likely it'll be one. We'd be really awesome if we got 2 of them, but most likely it would be one of those that they will kind of have to make a decision on the fly as guidance comes out from the Santa Fe.
So what you're asking council was for 10 of the others?
10
not
of
large
the
fund.
normal
Okay,
capital outlay.
I got you.
And Mayor, can I just, I'm sorry, one follow-up question. On the 5 projects, do you expect some of these to also fall in line with the federal funding?
Yes, actually, we do. As we look at the ones for the Las Cruces Innovation and Industrial Park for the roadway and the solar farm, that is potentially something we could go to EDA for because it does create jobs, long-term jobs. The bypass is something that we might partner with NMDOT depending on what kind of funding they get. But we don't know that they are in huge support of this. They've done some preliminary work on a potential bypass road to the Santa Teresa Port of Entry, and we have yet to be able to have sit-down discussions with DOT on whether that could be potentially funded through something they get federally. The airport, of course, I think we'll see some FAA competitive money coming out, and with the rural interstate air service grant from the state, if we can get that, that may encourage FAA to provide us with more funding for some of those improvements. I don't know that we would get all of those improvements. It's a big ask out there. Utilities, that one I'm not too sure about, and the downtown safety complex I think is a little difficult. What we heard today from some folks from Washington was that the public safety money that's coming out is going to be focused on something you all are very interested in, which is mobile intervention crisis teams, as opposed to potentially capital projects. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why we kind of strategically said, okay, let's put it here, and if it goes forward based on management's wise decisions, then they can pick and choose which ones they want to bring forward to the governor and the legislature.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amy. You just said that the FAA would probably be a grant, an FAA grant would go to interstate travel. Did you mean intrastate?
Intra-state.
Yeah, you said
yes.
inter, but you
I'm
meant
sorry, I
intra.
meant intrastate.
Yeah, I thought, gee, I missed
Yes.
something. Okay, great. Thanks
Yeah,
for the
they,
clarification.
but we don't know how much competitive money will be for the FAA in that infrastructure bill that's coming before Congress right now. There is a lot of money towards roads, bridge development. There's also going to be a lot of money going towards transit, which is why you're not seeing a lot of transit projects here, because we do see a lot of opportunities for transit, particularly for electric buses. And so they haven't come out with everything that they've negotiated. We know some things are getting cut on a daily basis as they negotiate in Washington. So we don't know for sure what is coming out, but we're pretty confident that some of the more basic infrastructure like roadways and some of those kind of things will remain in the bill.
Thank you, Amy. Do you want my list now?
I'd love to have your list now.
First and foremost, utilities, septic system replacement. Second would be East Mesa roads and drainage. And then the others are not necessarily in the list. They're all, I wish I could throw all of them in there because they're all very direly needed. Amador Hotel renovation, Brennegan Cultural Center renovation, the 4 public safety police equipment, police station improvements, fire equipment, fire station improvements. Number 9, actually this is my number 1, airport improvements for air service. I'm so tired of paying my taxes to another state. And then the LCIP roadway and solar farm.
So those are the large projects that are separate.
Oh,
So in those, we are just asking for your general consensus that you agree with those projects as priorities for the city, for city management to
so do I
negotiate.
get to pick a few more?
Yes, you can pick a few more from the list on page 21 and
Well, that's-
22.
Wait a minute, so, well, I don't know, 20, well, that's too many choices.
I know, but if I hadn't
so-
given you choices, you'd be complaining about that too.
Well, oh, I'm not, I'm a complainer.
Uh-oh, I'm in
Wah,
trouble.
wah.
I'm in
Mommy,
trouble.
Mommy.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry, city manager, I apologize.
No, it's quite all right, Amy. Amy, we're among friends. It's been a long day. 2 more. Definitely Veterans Park.
Okay,
and definitely East Mesa pool improvements.
okay,
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Amy.
thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mayor, okay, now that I get this, now I'm going to
I know,
put
I'm
it
sorry
back.
that it's confusing, but it
Larger,
was,
I
was born
incorporated the
confused.
larger projects into the others, so now that I know what I'm doing. Mine is the Septic, Telstra, Loman, Amador, Brennegan, JCP. 6. Of course, the public safety, and the skate park. I added one that I should have, let's see. Sorry, Telstra. Then the skate park
okay.
and the 4 public
And we are
safety.
fairly confident that the skate community will be advocating for that. We also know that the veterans community will be advocating for the Veterans Park parking lot. So we have heard from them. We have heard from a couple other small groups regarding park improvements.
Who's advocating for the Veterans Park? Did you say? You just,
We have a gentleman in the audience, if you'd like to hear from him.
oh, no, it's Karen. Hello,
Oh, I'm
Karen.
sorry, Karen. I can
Oh,
put
wonderful.
your mask on.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Amy.
Yes. Okay.
Councilor Beta Stubbe, did you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I gave the list. I have a few probably strategic questions that I'll like to follow up with Larry on.
Great.
Okay,
He is
so-
available this afternoon.
So I'll share, if I may ask David Cedillo to come on down, and I was asking him something about the roads that we're trying to move forward, and I think either he or Eric, if Eric's available. I was talking about the Mesa Grande extension to Loman, and I know that's not on here, but if that was to come to fruition, that's why these public works projects are going to be really instrumental, especially that Loman Walnut intersection, because it's just, as time goes on, it just gets worn down. And so, Eric, I understand you all have been working with a different development group that's looking to extend Mesa Grande all the way to Loman, which, for those of you, which one of you are on the MPO? Okay, so for those members of the public, the MPO is basically a partnership between the city, the county, and the town of Mesa, and they really set out projects, roads, 5, 10, 15, 20 years in advance. And so I believe this was also on the MPO's wish list, and if this money is available, well, not this money, but if it moves forward, which Eric's going to talk about, you're going to see why Loman is going to really turn into a really important road. So, Eric?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Eric Enriquez, Assistant City Manager. So Mayor and Council, yes, we have already had preliminary discussions with a local developer group or development group that is looking to put in for federal funding that we can create a private and public partnership in developing that road from Highway 70 to Loman on Mesa Grande. Of course, it would benefit their future developments, and then also work in conjunction with the city of Las Cruces in tying in from Highway 70 to Loman, and also the East Mesa Public Safety Complex. It would tie into that complex facility. So we're all for it. It's just preliminary discussions at this point, trying to come up with an agreement on what part would be the private, which would be primarily the funding, and when it comes to design and inspections and those things would fall on the city, and we're currently working on that.
Very good. That sounds good. So really, mine would be the 4 public works projects, the 4 public safety projects, Veterans Park, and the skate park.
All right. That sounds good. So before we, my folks over here are from the Budget and Finance Office are giving me a calculation. Let's talk just for a brief moment about the reauthorization. Let me go back to that page. And so the reauthorization, as I mentioned, it started out at $2 million. $20,000 was removed from it, took us to $1.98 million. We have a contract for $314,000 and some odd dollars, leaving us with approximately $1.6 million. As Larry indicated, what we will do is go back to Legislative Council Service, and they will identify how much each legislator put forward. We believe there's the 2. We're not positive. There may be a couple others that put in smaller amounts that we would need to take into consideration. But basically what they'll do is take what we've spent and, take that right off the top and divide it up equally between the legislators that appropriated. So at this point, we have a general consensus on the downtown shade structure. Can I get that general consensus from everybody? And then the other 2 options, which were presented by Senator Souls, was the airport or the Amador. We could split those in half, 300 and some thousand to each, approximately, potentially a little more, or we could put that all towards one of the projects or the other project. And that is where I need a little bit of guidance from you all on what your desire might be, and I can bring this forward as a resolution if you would like.
Amy, when I spoke with Senator, he said it seemed like he wanted the majority to go to Amador and whatever was left over to the airport. So I guess it all depends on what comes out with your discussion.
Okay.
When EFO.
Both of those projects, Mayor, could use all $600,000+. Either one of them can use that amount of money without any hesitation. So it is much easier when we are reauthorizing that it goes only to 1 or 2 projects, because it makes it much easier to track down those legislators and get them to sign off on them. We could give Larry a lot of work and divide it between the 3, but it would be better to just divide it between 2 projects.
What would be the third?
So if we went with the airport or the Amador, or if we go with one or the other. So the downtown shade, the airport, if we go with the Amador as well, that's 3. If we choose the Amador or the airport, that would be 2 projects.
I don't think the Senator Souls mentioned anything about putting money into the shade.
No, the shade is with Senator Hamlin, so that's one portion of the reauthorization. The other portion of the reauthorization is what Senator Souls was interested in, and he said either the airport or the Amador, and so I need some direction on which one you want that to go to.
And so why is it 665 and 778?
Well, we just broke it up because when you had mentioned it, Senator Hamlin, you had talked about $1 million, so we just put that in there as a placeholder. It may go down a bit from $1 million, depending on how Legislative Council Service identifies that. Larry, if you want to speak to that a little more.
Sure. Mayor, the way it'll work is they'll take that original authorization, and for discussion purposes, let's assume Senator Souls gave $1 million and Senator Papin gave $1 million. So their share will then be reduced proportionally based on what's already been spent. So each of them would have the ability to reauthorize whatever amount is left. And then if there are other legislators in the mix, it works similarly. So if you only have one legislator who wants to spend on the shade structure, they would only be able to authorize the amount equivalent to what they originally authorized for the parking garage.
Okay, I didn't know they spent some money of it. I thought it was already $1 million intact. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, now it makes sense. Thank you. Thought you were playing the funny math. Okay.
No, we've spent $314,000.
Okay, so was there anything?
Any thoughts on that, comment?
Oh, I think, I don't know, I'm going to just, maybe we'll look for a resolution, and we'll have a blank on there, and maybe we'll invite the senator here and let him decide.
Larry has reached out to both senators to clarify what their desire is, and we can bring back a resolution if you would like, based on that conversation he has with them.
That would be great.
Okay.
When would that be?
That would most likely be by the first meeting of December.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let me call up our very capable finance director to list off the 10 that she's calculated here and see if everybody agrees in general that we can move forward with these top 10 items.
Mayor, Counselor, for the record, Leanne Jamouche, Finance Director. So the winning numbers are, for positive are septic tanks for utilities. And actually, Amy, if I can move up the, let's see, am I going the right direction?
Yes.
Okay. You're going the wrong direction. I am? Okay, sorry. Okay. For sure, the septic tank replacement, I think all of you had voted for that one. Right now, it looks as if 3 of the councilors have voted for JCP, the energy efficient exterior envelope. That would be our second one. Most, if not all, of the councilors voted on all 4 of the public safety for police and fire. So keep my number for me. So that's 6 right there. And right now it would be the Public Works East Mesa. So that would give us 7 right there. Those are the ones that have at least 3 to 4 votes of the councilors, because right now I only have voting. Mayor, you'll have to break the tie. I only have Councilor Stuvey, Bencomo, Flores, and Gondara's list. So there are those left with 2 votes would be the Veterans Parking Lot, Brennegan, unless I miscounted on one of them, I apologize, Amador, the skate park.
You need how many more?
I need 3 more, sir.
Okay,
So out of the 3 more, there is,
so let's just take veterans and then Veterans Park, skate park, and what was the other one?
there was Amador, and then the other 2 public works, which would be the Public Works Telstra and the Public Works Loman.
Yeah, and Telstra and Loman, so I go
Right
with
there.
those. I
Yeah,
go-
the Loman Walnut and the Telstra Spruce and the East Mesa, well, the East Mesa Rose I've already counted. So we need 1 more, which would be the Public Works Telstra, sir?
Yes, that's one of them.
That would give us a total of 10 right
Oh,
there.
Okay, all right. Good.
Okay, we're good. I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you for bearing with that kind of complicated process. I appreciate it, as I do every year, your input and guidance on these. It is a bit challenging to get through from the big list down to the smaller list and then to the final list. So we will move forward with bringing a resolution on the November 15th for these 10 projects identified as our capital outlay priorities. We will provide direction to City Manager's office on the 5 large projects that they can work on as guidance is provided from Santa Fe. And then we will bring forward a resolution on December 1st regarding the reauthorization of the parking lot garage. Does that fairly well cover what everybody feels is appropriate? All right, well, I thank you very much for your time and attention today. I know it has been a long process, and I appreciate it very much.
Oh, we appreciate you very much. I know it's a
Thank you.
really tedious task, and there's a lot of moving parts. So thank you, you two and your team for putting this together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, so next up is Mike Bartholomew, the Roadrunner Transit 5-year short-range transit plan. So is this a consultant or a new city employee to your right?
Mayor and Council, my name again is Mike Bartholomew. I'm the Transit Administrator for the City of Las Cruces, and what we're going to have presented before you today is the update to our short-range transit plan. The transit plan that we're currently under was adopted back in 2016, and we've accomplished a lot in that plan, and we had to start looking at our next 5 years. I would like to, last November, we contracted with Alliance Transportation Group, or ATG for short, and we've been working with that group since last November. And I'm going to introduce Tim Simon. He's the project manager from ATG for this particular project, and he will be doing the presentation on our updated plan.
Yeah, I can get it. Okay. Thank you. There we go. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. As you said, I'm Tim Simon. I'm the project manager who's been working with the Roadrunner Transit and the MPO to conduct the update to the short-range transit plan. I just want to start off by saying I want this to be much more of a discussion than a presentation, so if at any point you see something on the slide you have a question about, please interrupt me and I'd be happy to discuss it with you, or we can save questions to the end, either way. So we started out with our project vision was to bring, see how we can make the transit system more efficient, reliable, and connect people in Las Cruces. Our whole study area is pretty much the city of Las Cruces, but we also understand the relationship it plays in the regional area, so we coordinated with SCRTD as well, and the town of Mesa and the college campus. Our process involved the following main core components. Public engagement is always paramount in these types of effort, but we also wanted to be a public education process to inform the public about what makes transit work and how we can build upon that in the community. We also did a robust technical analysis looking at both the operations in existence, but also looking at the underlying markets they're serving. And then we created alternatives based on a combination of both that public engagement and technical process, and then presented those to the public again, got feedback, and did some final revisions to get our locally preferred alternative. This was the project timeline. It's been about a year now, and we're at the very end, and I'm here to present the final plan to you today. So I'll talk a little bit about the process and some of those core steps. So looking at fixed route operations, we dug down into the numbers, looking at ridership, where it's happening along the route, how the route functions and performs as a whole, how it contributes to the overall transit network. We worked with the MPO to look at auto traffic as well, because we want to make transit more attractive to the entire community. So we looked at where the most trips are happening in cars, both now and in the future, so that we can kind of shape our recommendations to mimic those behavior and make transit more attractive to everyone. So with anything, looking at the underlying markets is paramount. We dug down into the market analysis and looked at what I like to call those micro transit markets that really drive transit. Where the population and employment, so where are the people in jobs? We looked at all the people that really depend upon transit, poverty populations, minority populations, everyone. And so really it was looking at everyone in the community to make sure that we created a transit plan that was representative of the community. As I said, we did a robust public engagement process. Unfortunately, it was during COVID, but I think we overcame that through really engaging with our stakeholders and challenging them to really participate and understand that they're the voice of their community. And we were able to get a great response on our first survey that helped shape our recommendations. And we learned a lot about travel time. Really, it all comes down to time. Time is money. So people don't want to be spend on the bus too long. They want to get to where they're going. They don't want to be waiting for the bus. And so we looked and thought about that when we shaped our recommendations. How can we make it more efficient and be better for people? We also looked at where people are going and why they're using transit, so we can make sure that we are aligning our recommendations to the way people are using transit and are going to continue to use transit in Las Cruces. And then, as Mike said, a big component of this was looking at demand response type service and a new way to deliver transit service to better align the service delivery mechanism with the underlying markets. So we know we can't put fixed route transit, a 40-foot bus running a traditional transit route everywhere. So there's the advent of what's called microtransit, which is basically would be a taxi-like service, Uber, Lyft, if you will, that would be run by the city of Las Cruces, and that's a big component, and you'll see it in our final recommendation. And so this is also what I said about public education. it's important that we start to engage and inform the public about this type of service. It's different than taking a bus, not necessarily worse or better, but just different. And so that was a part of the process, was to really introduce and educate this concept. And so we have a few slides here to go over that, and I'd be, once again, happy to answer any questions you have about this. But really, microtransit vehicles are smaller vehicles, still ADA accessible, or at least have a mixed fleet where if they require an ADA or you have a mobility device, that the right vehicle would come to pick you up. And it's basically like going to a virtual bus stop, picking you up and taking you and dropping you off somewhere else in a designated zone. You'll see here it covers a large area that we're proposing, and it expands the reach and coverage of what Las Cruces or Roadrunner Transit is currently offering. So how's it work? You get on your phone, or if you're not a smartphone person, you can still just call, just like you would book a demand response trip today, and you plan your trip. It can be done same day. It doesn't require the same, advance warning. It can be done on the fly, and it's dynamic routing. So it looks, say that there's two people blocked from each other, both request a trip. It's efficient because it'll pick up both those people and basically create an on-the-fly bus route. Now, this isn't the silver bullet. It's not replacing transit or fixed route transit. It's more to complement that type of service. Here's a little short video. So you pick up your cell phone. You see that it's actually quicker, 8 minutes to take a ride as opposed to taking the bus. You hop on. There might be some other people on your vehicle, and you get to where you're going. Now, say, I'll just break real quick. Say you're close to a fixed route bus stop. It would say, no, you're close to a bus stop. We're investing in transit there. You walk to your bus stop. So it's very, the technology's there to where it knows what the best service to put you on. Okay, so getting to our alternatives. We took our public engagement feedback, all the technical analysis, and did a lot of work sessions with Roadrunner's staff who know the system in and out, and created our 3 draft alternatives. And then we developed a prioritization tool to look at those. So back when we were looking at those underlying markets, those then in turn turned into scoring mechanisms or performance measures. And now Roadrunner Transit has those to continue to monitor performance and use those to evaluate service, because as we know, transit is not static and it'll continue to change. So looking at population and employment densities, looking at transit dependence riders, and looking at growth in the future, and then frequency as well. This is an example of that prioritization tool, kind of a look under the hood, and you had our existing service and then each of the alternatives. What's important to know, though, is that you'll see we did it by route as well in that second column, so not just alternatives. So the process was purposely done that way to where we are not asking you to pick A or B and what's the best alternative. Rather, we ask the community, what do you like or don't like about A? What do you like or don't like about alternative B? And that way we're able to isolate the weaknesses and identify the strengths of each alternative, and then that's what helped us arrive at our preferred alternative. They were presented to the public, both set up on static boards in the intermodal facility and available online. You can see here is an example of alternative A. It shows you how it compares to the existing service and what the changes were. Alternative B and C, and we did that as well. So we had a survey, second round of surveys, where we got input about what they did or did not like. And you'll see in our plan, we identified what we learned from this process, and it really shaped our ultimate recommendation. It wasn't just checking the box of the public engagement process. We had some initial ideas. One I can speak personally that I really liked, but it didn't end up on the final recommendation because of valuable feedback we heard from that process. So once again, we asked those true-false questions. That informed our locally preferred alternative. We ended up with, I'll go over the main points here, the micro-transit zone with what we're calling micro-hubs throughout the city. So you see those little blue dots. Those are at various senior centers, and then one at the intermodal facility. So people can use the micro-transit service, just like a taxi service, anywhere in that zone, in and out of that zone, including those little islands or microtransit hubs. We made some strategic changes to Route 1 and 3 that coincide with this. Route 1, we have a new direct connection. This was kind of the highest performing segments of the existing Route 1, but connecting it into the community college. And then we also made a change to Route 3, providing some new coverage, but still maintaining some existing coverage of the existing Route 3. And it's connecting down to the mall. Both these routes, like I said, work in combination with the microtransit zone as well. So that brings us to our locally preferred alternative. Really, there's no one left behind, I'd say, because either if you don't have what traditionally was served by a fixed route, it would now be available via microtransit, or you have new, better service as well, because we broke this up into phases to be sustainably and implemented by the transit agency. It's tough to do it all in 1 year. But once both phase 1 and 2 are complete, you'll have another more frequent route than was there before, and you'll have a new type of service that will be a lot more appropriate for the market it's serving. Here's the draft time frame, but once again, this can be accelerated or decelerated as needed. We're coming out of the COVID pandemic. I'm sure that Mike and his team want to see kind of the dust settle, ridership return, so this can be done as they see fit. We included a phase 3, which is really kind of some of the other potential solutions that we identified, but that might not be ready yet, and that's kind of beyond the 5-year outlook. And then I'll go through costs here, and these are all detailed in the plan. And there's a lot of ways to look at this because it includes both capital and operational. I would be paying mostly attention to the operational, as the capital is more of the one-time vehicle purchases. But I also note that this plan doesn't call for any increase large capital purchases of the large buses that are used to run your fixed route system. These are for microtransit vehicles, but through our study, we identified in what we think could be some efficiencies with the existing paratransit and demand response services, and so there is a potential where some of these capital costs might not happen if Roadrunner is able to work with their vendors and make those efficiencies happen. But the operational, it does go up, and so by each phase, and so if you're at the end of phase 2, I'd categorize it as about a 30% increase in annual operational expenses. And those are the numbers you see up there now. And I'll gladly, I have my cheat sheet up here. If you have any more specific questions, I can kind of dig into those numbers if you want. So that brings us to our conclusion. We have our preferred alternative, we have our implementation plan, and our path forward to implement this plan. So I'll gladly go back to any slides or answer any questions you have, and I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for that, Tim. Can you go back to that, the slide you just moved from? No, the other one.
The map?
Yeah. Can you expand that by any chance?
Let's see. I might not be able to. Sorry. Is there a specific question I can look at?
I just wanted to ask if it's, let's say, for example, I'm on the blue route and I need to get to the, I guess the brown or the pink area. So there are certain areas where they seem to overlap. That would be the bus stop that I would get off on and then catch the other bus route?
So are you referring to the microtransit zone?
I have no idea. I'm just just trying to get to the other side, and I don't know how you do that. And it kind of reminds me of Metro in Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
and when you need to get on a different color line, there's only certain areas that you can do that.
Today, most of the transfers happen at the intermodal facility or at the mall. There are some other places where you can transfer. One of the good things is our recommendation for Route 1, which would be kind of the dark maroon route you see there. After phase 2, would be running at a 30-minute frequency. So a bus comes by the stop every 30 minutes as opposed to every hour as it is today. And it crisscrosses some routes to where you could make those connections, and that kind of just expands the opportunities for a passenger, if that's what you're talking about. But like that light blue route, that's how it is today. Route 5, you come in, you get to the intermodal facility and you make a timed transfer. They pulse in and out of there as well. And then you could go from there. Now, being how that's one of our micro transit hubs at the intermodal facility, you could technically get that in there, have a trip scheduled, and get anywhere in that micro transit zone you see.
Okay. And you may already have this at the various stops, but I haven't seen it. Again, it might be there. But is there any way to have what you have right here on each stop so that residents can read it and say, oh, okay, well, I'm on the...
A map at the stop?
Right, I'm on the blue side here, so I'm not going to be able to get to where I need to go.
So I'm going to channel Richard right now, who helps run this operation, and Mike, and think about the cost of maintenance and facilities, because I used to work for a transit agency, and with anything like that comes expenses of, putting in a poster sign and then it comes graffiti and it comes maintenance and all that. There is a move towards having a QRC code to where then you're at that stop and you click on it with your phone, and that would open up a whole world. And I think when they're working with vendors on this microtransit zone, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, they would be able to include that into that type of request. And we also prepared an appendix, which is a technology report that speaks to that. So in a way, yes, you could do that, especially we also created a bus stop amenities plan that talks about how you guys allocate finite resources using performance measures. Where should a shelter go? Where should, maybe if it's a high traffic area, an actual printed out map or something like that? So yes, to answer your question, but it needs to be done strategically.
Okay.
Do you want to add anything to that?
I know the city has a good, on the website, it's very nice, and each section is broken down. I was just thinking, I just seem to recall some of the bigger cities that I've been at, they'll have it behind a plexiglass, and like you said, it is a map, but and I'm sure there is some graffiti done, but at least they're able to just see it both, whether they have because not everyone will have a smartphone.
Yeah,
but
I would say yes, especially the areas where we're recommending shelters, because we've given them a bus stop amenities plan to where these are high areas, or it's an area where you're going to make a transfer. We have a bunch of standards, and you can dig into that plan, and that would be somewhere where, yes, you'd want probably a printed out map of the system. I live in Austin, Texas, and there, most of the stops still have the QRC code. You either call, say I'm here, or you scan it if you have a smartphone, and then you're having that for some of the lower traffic areas.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. So this microtransit map that we have in front of us, does that cover all of the routes in the city?
No, just where you see the dark area, the pinkish. That would be the microtransit zone. Now, that's a phase 1 recommendation. It can be expanded or contracted from there. You haven't had microtransit in the city before, so we'd want to start small and manageable. It seems very large, but that's because a lot of those areas are not very dense, and so the demand is lower, and thus a better tool of serving them as opposed to a bus route that's going to come every hour. That way, if someone needs to take a trip in that area, they call, you make the strategic trip, you're not running an empty bus up there.
So do we have any buses going out to Hacienda Acres?
Currently, you have...
Any bus? I mean, maybe that's a question for Michael, because this is just a design for micro-transit zone, where people switch on and off routes or something, but it's not available. So do we have bus lines that go out to Hacienda Acres?
Mayor, Councilor Flores, we currently have a bus route that goes out Highway 70 to as far as Porter Road. With this particular design, Hacienda Acres would be kind of in the upper right-hand area of that microtransit zone. So anybody living in that area would have access to the microtransit service. So they would schedule a ride on microtransit,
it could bring them anywhere within that microtransit zone, and including the little islands, or they can either go to where they need to go, or perhaps transfer to a fixed route that will take them to other parts of town.
So our bus lines go on Highway 70? They don't go on Bataan Memorial East?
They go on Bataan East.
They
and
go
west.
on Bataan. So are there bus stops along that way?
Currently, there are.
There are. So people who work or attend Oregon High School can take a bus into that area or out of that area?
Yes, there's a bus stop on Bataan right by the high school.
And then they also would be, they could call like that Uber type service to get, or how much does that cost?
Same as the bus.
It would be the same as a bus fare.
Oh,
So with this, you don't see a route going out there because we would be replacing the route that goes out there with a microtransit service that everybody would have access to.
And you did that study and it showed, who were the respondents to that study, the stats that you showed?
In terms of the public input, you mean?
It was an anonymous survey, and it was stakeholders. It was stakeholders throughout the community. We have a list of the stakeholders that we could provide to you.
So was it, it sounds, what I was able to glean is that they're writers, the people who participated were writers, or?
The survey was designed so where anyone could take it. You could take it, anyone could take it and answer the questions. And so that way we were trying to get at current writers, but also people who might take it in the future.
Okay, so the other, my main area of concern is having a public transportation that everyone can take, and this has come up from time to time insofar as environmental issues go, and as far as pollution and all that, because Las Cruces generates 73% of the pollution generated, or the GHG emissions that are generated here in Las Cruces come from cars, automobiles, buses, whatever, trucks.
Sure.
So, it sounds like the Uber-type system would reduce some of the need for a huge bus going out there to collect maybe one or two passengers, and vice versa, going back, going forth.
Yes.
So do you have any study that's related to the reduction in any GHG emissions or anything like that? With this kind of, with the...
That was not included in this study, but I can say...
Has it been done in Austin or wherever else you've
There's
worked?
been lots of studies about, yes, the reduced carbon impact for that. Yes.
It would be good to have that information to disperse, or to have that information to see how this is also affecting, or benefit, the quality of our environment.
And I'll also say that we gave in the big plan the cost if you want to purchase both electric microtransit vehicles or traditional diesel, so that Richard and his team have the cost of both.
Oh.
So those new vehicles could be purchased, could be electrical if they wanted. So you have it's a higher cost point, but you have that in the plan and the option.
Yeah, but you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
It's being...
I think more importantly is the note you hit on is it's a low ridership area, but it doesn't mean there's not any demand there. So this is matching the service delivery tool. It's expanding your toolbox for how you can provide transit and matching it with the underlying market. So putting more frequent fixed route bus, like on Route 1, going to community college where that higher demand is, but then providing a new alternative that I think would actually work out better for them. And we had a lot of these conversations with the community. Because if you put yourself in the, I'm a transit user, if you miss a bus that comes every hour, that's a long wait at a place out there that they probably don't have a shelter because it's so low demand. Whereas with this service, I can look on my app, I know the bus is coming, I've scheduled it because it worked with my schedule, and it's getting me in the same area where the bus would today.
Yeah. Well, a bus every half hour isn't great either.
No, it's a step in the right direction on
But
increasing
I've lived in
some of those.
metropolitan areas, and And the bus service was, so wonderful. You could, just pretty much walk out of your house and
Yeah.
walk a couple of blocks, and there'd be a bus coming. If it didn't come, you could see it leaving, but then a few minutes later, there's another
Yeah.
one coming. So I hope Las Cruces gets to that point, Mr. Bartholomew, Mr. Opili, where we do have bus service available. And so I know that those are just, it's not, what I brought up isn't germane specific to your presentation, but I thought I'd bring that up because I think I brought it up before. And then some of the routes, I think we had that conversation too. I don't understand why there isn't a route connecting Sonoma Ranch Boulevard and Roadrunner Parkway at Mission. I mean, that would be a perfect way to pick up a bunch of people who would rather ride buses than have a car to go everywhere. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Would you want to reply to that, Mr. Bartholomew?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Flores, so just clarifying, we do have routes on portions of Sonoma Ranch.
But not on Mission.
Not on Mission. We have it, yeah, and we have them on Roadrunner. But a system like this would actually make that connections a lot better within the area because people basically schedule the rides when they need it on the microtransit in those areas to either travel within the microtransit zone or to the islands or to get to where they can transfer to a bus to other parts of town.
And what would the cost difference be? Or, have you done the apples to apples type of thing where, or maybe it's an apple oranges thing, if you use a micro transit hubs as opposed to what we have now, is it really going to?
The cost for the passenger?
Cost to us, the passenger, the taxpayer, the city.
The fare will be the same whether you're using fixed route or microtransit.
But okay, so then it goes then to the other.
So to the
what would be
city,
the expense to the city?
It's a cheaper hourly rate than fixed route to
Okay.
use microtransit.
And that includes car, insurance, and liability, and all that sort of
Technology as well. Technology is baked in.
Technology.
Yes.
stuff. Oh, great. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for your presentation. So with the microtransit, you're advocating for a app, if you will. Someone would utilize that. Now, would that extend into the regular fixed routes? Or how would that work? Because we've been talking about wanting to move into not only purchasing of tickets, but also using that route.
So I
right,
can
that app,
respond if you want
will.
to, but you would solicit to get some kind of technology to run this type of service, and you could curate your RFP however you want and say, we want to, a full turnkey solution. We want, a redo of how we pay for fixed route fare. But as I said in that example, it would show you if there's someone in that zone next to a fixed route bus stop, it's going to say, take the bus. And then you could have that into your solution as well, to where you could pay by your mobile app and everything, because you wouldn't want someone using the microtransit zone that lives or is standing next to a bus stop of fixed route because you've invested in the fixed route. That's how it makes the efficient solution for you.
Oh, okay, got you. So does this replace Dollar Ride or in addition to it?
Not system-wide. In the zone, though, you can run it, you can set it up how you want and have it as a all-in-one solution. Now, we did look at a further long-term solution to where you could do a zone for the whole city, but you would want to, start out like this, get the data, and that's the other thing we should mention. You're going to get a wealth of data and learn about how transit users are using the system that you don't have now, which is really powerful for Mike and his team.
And Mr. Mayor, Councilor Gondar, I was going to add too with your question about dial rate too, is to talk about integrating things through an app. It can be integrated into the service as well. In fact, we were even discussing today how in the transit industry, commingling microtransit with the ADA paratransit is becoming more and more of a topic that's being discussed.
Okay, thank you. So let me get this right. I need the bus or some microtransit, and I go into this app and I put forth whatever questions are they asking me, right? And I will get the most efficient form of transit.
Yep.
To me.
You'll say where you are and where you want to go, and
Okay.
it'll say the quickest way is for you to either get on this microtransit trip or walk 200 feet to the left to grab a bus stop.
Got you.
Unless, and you'll have a profile, and so if you are, say you're in a mobility device and you're qualified for ADA paratransit, it'll just know that automatically and say microtransit's on its way. It's not going to tell you to walk to a bus stop.
And so phase one, when are you anticipating? We have to do an RFP, right? What is the timeline? What are your?
I think we said like the 1 to 2 year, probably 2 year time frame, but it's scalable.
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Gondra, yes, we would go out for an RFP. Now, this microtransit technology is really blossoming in the transit industry, so even as staff, we're learning all the options out there. So I would see a lot of like this coming 12 months, once this is adopted, is that we're already getting contacted by numerous companies that provide microtransit softwares in various forms. So we'll be looking at that data, trying to come up with the best solution, that's out there, and then we would go out for RFP for a particular product.
Okay, so we would look to having this microtransit in 18 months, 2 years? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So as far as a timeline, we're looking to have the microtransit in like 2 years?
Yes, it's in the 2022 to 2024 range would be the first range of implementation. I would say that, again, that probably going into our city's fiscal year 23, we'll be getting more and more of the data, but we'll be prepared to, do the requests, budgetary requests necessary for moving forward.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Beta-Stubbe?
Yes, thank you. Both. I had a couple follow-up questions based on some of the questions Councilor Flores asked around the microtransit around school districts. I also see that Centennial also is in the zone for a microtransit zone. Looking at the technology, even the app, are there going to be requirements or age limits on those types of technology? And how do you see that working with youth that may not have access to phones all the time?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Beta-Stubbe, it would be public transit. It's available to anybody, regardless of disability or age.
Okay. And
To follow up on that, you can call in and their dispatch could put all the information in for you. So it would be, if you want, there's a smart app way to do it, or you can do it traditionally by calling.
okay. And then do we ever see the need, well, I personally see a need for making sure that there's interconnectability between schools and the community. And a lot of students even go down to the university, and if there was even a small section where it would go from Centennial straight to the university and connect somewhere along there, that way they would have access to that greater community.
All right, so you're saying, would the zone be inclusive of the university?
Adding a route from Centennial to the easiest pathway that I see here is to connect it straight down on University, so that
Adding a fixed, a
Yeah.
traditional bus route?
yes.
From Centennial?
If we're looking long-term, it may not be needed this second, but if we're looking long-term and the growth even in those areas, how we see that.
Well, with Centennial High School, the problem with going out there is right now is that that's all there is out there. So that it would be very probably inefficient with a large bus, so that's why microtransit would work very well for Centennial High School because of where it's located right now. We could consider adding the university as a microtransit zone, or a location in the university as a microtransit zone, so that would be that connection. Or certainly, at the very least, with the way the proposal is you see before you, it's easy to get the students over to Telstra, where there are buses that go either to DACC or NMSU from there, so they wouldn't have to walk from the school to where the bus stops are.
Okay.
And actually, in this particular scenario, DACC is in the microtransit zone, so they could be delivered directly there.
Okay. And once we got this microtransit zone up and running, would we be doing any sort of trainings with the schools to make sure that students and faculty kind of knew about the program, had access, could even practice with this type of?
Yes, we added in a line item, and we estimated it based on best practices, and our sub-consultant VIA that does this a lot, a marketing campaign of about $40,000 necessary to promote it citywide. That's going to be key to having a successful microtransit zone, is continuing that public education process.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so I just want to take a moment to congratulate Mike. I think we started around the same time. I think you came on about a year after me, and you've handled the challenges of our system, you know, and I know that many residents were always wanting to know why we couldn't use a smaller vehicle, and I know there's certain regulations that the federal government wouldn't fund us for those, and throughout the time I've just seen, and I like how you've been able to really put it in a way that's as understandable as possible. And I know it's a challenge, and to see this eventually come through is really a neat thing to see. I mean, I haven't taken the bus, or I almost did the other day just to try it out, you know, because but I ran out of time. I had to get back. I had to do some stuff. But I'm looking forward to it, and I think this is just slowly growing into a really neat system. And I don't know if the council knows how much the city actually subsidizes, at least we used to, and I'm sure we still do, because we only get probably 10% of what it takes to run from passengers, and the city's general fund used to subsidize you at least 80 or 90%. Is that still in the ballpark?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's actually probably less than 10% on fixed route, and it's probably closer to 1% to 2% on the dollar rate service that we get back from fares.
So that's why we just can't just put bus stops all over, because it costs a lot of money. But you know, hopefully this is something here that I think has a lot of grab to it, and we appreciate you and what you've been doing all these years. So
One thing I'll add too is one of the great things about this zone is the data you'll get. So you asked, well, can there be a traditional fixed bus route to here? Once you start seeing how people are using this zone, that informs you to let you know where you should expand fixed route. And so this is why it is in short term, and why they're going to get a wealth of information that they don't have now, because people are just using a bus pass and you can't track them. But you know, with having those phones, they'll have, you know, an anonymous data pool to know how people are using that system, and it will help you all make much more strategic decisions about transit in the future.
very good.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have one ask.
Sure.
Is it possible for you, I don't know if it's outside of the call of your deliverables in your contract, but would it be possible to have a projection as to how this kind of transportation would help eliminate some of that GHG emission? Or is that information? Yeah, you should have that. It's because this is what you do around the country, right?
Yeah.
So you probably do have like per mile type reduction of emissions.
Let me follow up with that, and
That would be
I'll
great,
get Mike some information.
because then that could be incorporated with some of our green stuff, and you know, and then that's also our climate action stuff. So
Absolutely.
yeah, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great. Was there anything more to the presentation?
No,
Does that
sir.
conclude? Okay. All right, well, thank you again very much.
Thank you so much.
And looking forward to it. So, Ifo, you think that's it, huh? Nothing else? Okay, if there's nothing else, then entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved by Flores.
Second, Gandara.
Motion made by Councilor Flores, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. That we adjourn. Christine?
This is on the motion to adjourn the work session. Councilor Benastuvi?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez is absent. Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg is absent. Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gandara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, we're adjourned. It's 4:03 p.m. And have a good rest of the evening. And we'll be doing our agenda setting meeting here in just a moment. Okay, this is the agenda setting meeting for our November 1st, 2021 City Council meeting. Number 1, consent.
1 consent.
2, consent.
2 consent.
3, consent.
3 consent.
4, consent.
4 consent.
5, non-consent.
5 non-consent.
6, non-consent.
6 non-consent.
7, non-consent.
7 non-consent.
And 8, non-consent.
8 non-consents.